Hey guys, it's Sarah again, bringing you some more painted projects. Today I'm hoping to figure out how to get a full project in a video. So I've taken some shortcuts here and I've got some boards prepped. And I'm going to show you what I used and what we're going to be using. And it starts off with some Waverly Wax and clear. And I keep being asked, is that important? It is. This is what we're using as our medium. Yes, I have tried multiple other products. I could line them out across this desk and show you. This one I've had the best results with in getting this look consistently. I can do it with others myself, but I've been practicing at this a while. For somebody that maybe this isn't necessarily something that you dive into, it's a lot easier to get the look with this than it is some of the other brands. So the next one is the Waverly Wax in the color Antique, which is a brown color. And then the Waverly Wax in the color Ink. Now, it is not an ink. That's just the name for their color black. So I hope that clears any confusion some people had. The other tools I'm going to be using are some chippy brushes. These are Dollar Tree version right here, the narrower ones. This one is a Walmart version. They're all about the same quality. One's just slightly wider. This is the sponge that I use. Dollar Tree carries these in their bath section. I cut them in half to get the most use out of them. And then, as you can see with this one, it steadily gets cut down until it just wears completely out. So I've got my paints poured in each one of my little trays just to make it convenient for me. I've got its corresponding color and clear wax. So I've got the ink color and some, clear wax. I've got some antique color and the clear wax. And I've got my sponges ready. I'm going to explain with my sponges. I keep them like this. I don't clean them every single use. Because I've been doing a lot of these, I put them in a Ziploc bag so they still kind of maintain their moistness with this material in it. So they're always kind of slightly loaded. So if I rub across there, you can see it still has a little bit of pigment in there and it hasn't hardened and dried out. So I've got a couple boards that I went ahead and started, and I've got those kind of drying, and you can see that even when they're not fully dry, they're dry enough that you can manipulate. So this is a messy thing. If you don't like messy, you can always do gloves. It's less fun for me that way. So the first thing I usually do is the knot holes, and I get asked about those, and it's really, really simple. I've already done a couple on here, so I'm just going to show you on the back of this one. So all I'm doing is taking my fingernail and I'm digging down into there. So I've made almost a circular parentheses type shape. It's not a full circle. It doesn't have to be a full circle. It can be lopsided and a little wonky, and it'll still all work out in the end. The next thing is I take something that I can stab or poke with, and it's not hard to do on here, and I just poke a bunch of holes randomly in it. So now that we've got through that part, there are videos on the wood. You're going to see I'm not doing any fancy finish yet. So right now I'm basically just coating these boards, and that's why I went ahead and got a couple done, and I'm just going to show you this process real quick. There are more in-depth videos on just the paint techniques. So what I'm doing is making sure the sponge is pretty loaded right here at the tip, and I'm using my finger to push down and push this antique wax down into the little cracks and holes and things that I've made. That way they stand out, and I'm just blending all of that down. I'm rubbing that sponge across with different pressure, and you can see it's leaving a variety of textures. This one is already cut at a 45-degree angle. It was left over from one of my bigger projects, but I'm going to go ahead and use it today. We'll do this one real quick. Same thing. I'm just going to dip a little. I'm going to push that down into those holes, at least the ones I can see. Once you rub a little of this across there, you can see some of those holes a little better against that white. So I'm going to go a little further into this. Some of you may have seen on some of my examples lately a few other details that you can get, but I'm not going to do those until this project is kind of put together, so I know the placement. And this sponge is almost unloaded with pigment, so you can see that it's starting to get a little harder to pull that across. So I've got these kind of at their lightest stage. I didn't want to go real heavy in color. And here's why. So we've got these. They could pass for plywood pieces. And if you've seen the plain wood video that has the 4 different tones of woods that range kind of from plywood to oak to almost a red mahogany, it goes further into how to get more details on these, all the way down to individual grains and things like that. So be sure to check that one out. So these are ready. They're a little tacky, but they're mostly dry enough for what I'm about to do. So I'm going to move one out of the way. And I'm taking my black sponge. Now, mind you, this one is small, so it doesn't have a whole lot left on it. And I'm just going to take a brush just to get a little bit of this black laid down for me to use. And I'm going to tap it down on there. And I tried to clean my little palette a little better so that you guys could see maybe a little closer the consistency that I mix my paints with. And all I'm doing is just kind of cleaning that paint back off that brush in case I want to use it. So I've got some black. I'm going to dip into this white, which is actually clear, but it looks white to you guys. So this is the clear wax. And I'm going to pick up a little of this black pigment. I'm going to tap some of that off over here. So I'm going to start going over this. And you can already see what that's doing. So I could stay really light with this and keep this kind of wood, this blackish brown wood tone. And I'm going to learn those stain colors. If I'm going to be mimicking them, I know how they look. I just don't know the names for them. So I will try to learn that, to explain that better. So I'm making that a little easier to see. Normally you guys will see me do this part right at the beginning, but because I was going to come in with this darker color, I didn't want my sides brown. I wanted them dark. And that's because of the type of piece that this is, or what this is going to become. So I'm just pushing a little of that pigment down in there. So let me go back in and finish what I was doing here. So this is going to end up looking like a really old wood. Now I do want you to see, it faded that brown out quite a bit, partially because if I had let these dry overnight, that would have had more time to soak in. So as I'm rubbing that sponge across, I'm rubbing some of the brown back off. It's still getting the effect that I wanted to show you. But if you let these dry in the brown color overnight, you have less of the brown getting pulled off later. So I'm just going to keep doing each one of these. And I'm going to do a layer. And then I'm going to move along to the next one until I get the darker grained look that I want. And I have a fingerprint on that one. So I'm pulling in more of the wax. You can see that. Pulling in a little more of the black pigment. Now, if you just go in with an acrylic paint or a chalk paint, these are going to warp and buckle on you. It can be done, and I will show that in another video, but it has to be done a specific way to keep the warping, the damage, and the top surface from peeling. And there are tricks to get around that. So I will be showing that on another video coming pretty soon. I'm going to get some of that darker color down, and now those really pop. So one of the tips that I want to give you is that when you're trying to hold these still, if you will hold them in your little knot hole spot, that'll kind of help keep it still without leaving too many fingerprints behind. And I'll still have to go in and do my edges. But you can already see the difference in those woods or in those tones. Now, I will be doing another video using the same exact paint colors and showing you an entirely different look. So I'm going to do these two at the same time. Save myself some effort. And if you notice, there is no rhyme or reason to this right now. I'm not working on my realism so much as I am just getting these two layers applied. And you can see how beautiful that's already coming out. And so this is why I was saying, I'm not really sure what you would call this color wood. I've seen it before, especially on salvage wood or palette wood, where it's got a lot of the black in the graining. I'm assuming that's in salvage wood, that it's mold or mildew or something down into the wood's grain, like mildew or something to that effect. So I want you to see anywhere that there is an indentation or damage to your foam core, that's going to show up. Don't be afraid of it though, because especially when you're doing a barn wood look or a salvage wood look and you're not doing something that's formal and neat, the more banged up, damage, whatever that's there, the more realistic it comes out. So I'm just going to go back in and try to get each layer a little darker. And the reason I do it separately and switch off is just that little bit of time gives this paper material on the top of here to absorb your pigments so that you're not lifting as much of it back off, and you're layering those paints over one another rather than painting something to get a full coverage. So we're working with the transparent abilities that these particular paint mediums have. So I'm loving this color. I don't know if you can tell how rich that is looking already. I'm going to try to hold. Let's see if I can get a little closer for a split second. Look at those beautiful rich tones. There is so much depth in there because it's picking up some of the browns. It's picking up some of the blacks. There's lighter and darker depending on where I'm putting pressure. And this absolutely looks like salvage wood. Now I could go and do just like this with the multiple colors. And on a lot of projects I would. On this one, let me go back out. On this one, I kind of want a little uniformity in my colors. Now each time I go across there, I switch the pressure that my fingers are applying through this sponge just a little bit. So in one stroke, I may be putting pressure down with my middle finger, and it's going to leave darker areas there. And then where my other fingers are, those areas will be lighter. Or I may push down more in another spot. Absolutely love this color. This truly, truly, I know it seems like it's a trick of the camera or filters or something, but even in person, it is absolutely convincing. Okay, so I've got that done. I'm going to go in with the next part. Now, my knot holes look fantastic. I'm just going to alter a few. And I'm going to take just a little makeup sponge that I've been clipping the tips off of. And I'm actually going to do 2 different colors since I'm already working with 2 different colors. So I might go around like that. And you just kind of want to tap it around so that you're not getting the square shape here. So that's just making those just a little more detailed. And there's barely any paint at all on my little makeup sponge here. So those look really nice. You can go one step further and add even more depth. I'm going to tap that a little bit into the black. Go right in the very center. So now there's even more dimension to that. This is not necessary. I mean, I do tend to shadow these some going in with the 2 separate colors. Not really a necessary thing, but it definitely adds to, you can see how that looks. So you see the darker and lighter. Okay. I've got one little fingerprint kind of icky spot here. Let me clean that up. All right, so these are pretty much ready to go. I'm going to do the edges now. And this is why I didn't do a brown edge, is since these were going to be this darker color. I didn't want that brown quite as much for this. Now be sure, since you're doing this afterwards, check those edges, especially if you do the whole stack like I try to do. Check those edges and make sure you don't have a lot of seepage, although if you notice right there, my board hit and drug a little paint across this other board. I'm leaving it. Totally leaving that. It just adds to that salvage wood look. On a lot of the other colors, you can't get away with that. You definitely want to come back in and clean up. That's why I usually do this step first, so you can blend that out right off the bat. And I'm not going to do any more of these edges until I get these cut down, because I'm still going to have to do those edges. So let me clean my hands off, and I want to show you how we're going to cut these down. This is one of the questions that I get asked quite a bit. What kind of magic am I using to get such clean edges? And that's it right there. That's the magic. No handle, no blade, no tool. This gives better control, better depth, and it just works out better. So one of my first pieces I'm actually going to be doing letters. And because I'm doing letters, I actually want my first letter to be an A, since my A is going to be my widest letter. And then I'm going to measure out my other letters to kind of fit that. So I want my A right here. This is where this 45 that was already cut is very handy. But I want my A right here to go straight across. So I'm going to turn this at a weird angle so that I can get to it. And I'm just going to find a spot to cut straight across there. And let's see. Because I want my legs to look straight too. Grab a pencil so I can mark this off. So I'd say right about here. I'm an eyeballer kind of person. If you like measurements. Well, if you like measurements, you can measure. I'm just more of a fan of the creative spirit. So it looks like I'm cutting that a little crooked. However, once this is together, you'll see that it'll make the top of that A. And I'm just going to use my cutting mat right here to determine my size. And it's a 12-inch mat. It's going to make these 12-inch letters. And I feel like that's good for me. Okay. So on cutting this, one of my biggest tips you're about to see. When you line up your straight edge, make sure that your straight edge comes a little off of your foam core that you're trying to cut. Start with your blade a couple inches before so that your pressure is ready. If you start right at this point, typically you don't have as much pressure, and this first little section always ends up getting ripped apart. And I'm going to show you that again. Oh, I love this. It turned out right against one of the knotholes. So I'm starting above. That way I get my pressure ready. And there we go. And I'm going to put these two pieces to the side. That way I have them if I decide to use them. So here's the beginning of our first letter. These are going to be a pretty good size. Did I not cut? I did not cut the angle on this one. So let me get that lined up again. That would make better sense. There we go. Y'all, my blonde is absolutely natural. God knew what he was doing. So I'm going to line this up. I'm going to use this cut that was left over from the end of here. And like I said, I'm doing all this without actually having to do real measures. So I've got that one marked. And I'm going to go in and do very same thing. Start up above, slide down. Beautiful, perfect cut. So this is part of the reason why I didn't go ahead and ink all the edges. Or, I'm sorry, in scrapbooking it's called inking the edges. This is why I didn't shadow the edges out. This is not necessary other than the fact that it gives more realism. I do this on every piece. I do the edges the best I can. That way you're not seeing any of the white. And this right here tears up the sponges going across these edges, which is why I recommend these sponges. If you try it with the makeup sponge, it shreds. This one is bad enough. The makeup ones just can't hold up to it. Okay, guys, my timer says I got 5 minutes to pull this together. Okay, so here we go. Here is our letter A. I am going to use something easy peasy. Normally I use another foam core backer. However, because these are letters and I want them to lay as close to the wall with command strips, I want it as close as I can get it. I'm going to cut down a couple of popsicle sticks here. And like I said, I normally back all of mine with another full sheet of foam core. However, because I'm not mounting these to anything except for a wall, and I'm just going to go right across that seam. So let's get our little center section here. I'm going to push that in nice and snug. There we go. I'll load that one up. And pull those together tight and just hold this in place. And yes, my hands always look like this anymore. Ever since I started this, this is my new fashion statement. Okay, this was one of the things that I wanted to tell you that I was not going to show until it was put together. So this little piece right here it's not necessary. You can find anything that's kind of flat and wide, but it's just a little bit wider kind of spot. And I'm going to go in right there and right there. I'm going to go right here and right here. Let's see, right there and right there. And right here and right here. Because those are the spots that would most likely have staples if this thing was stapled together. So working quickly, I'm going to go in and push some of that down in there. Then blend off the excess, rub out the excess. So now you can see it looks like those are stapled in place. And push it into... I couldn't do this until the end, simply because I wanted to make sure I knew where they were going. So that adds to the complete entire realism of that. So let's see if I can knock out these next two really fast. Move these tools out of my way. So I'm going in. Our A was 12 inches, just to make sure that I'm catching that right. I want to make sure that they're pretty close to the same. I'm pretty sure I measured that out at 12, but I wanted to make sure. So I'm going to go in right here, cut another one of these 3-inch strips down. And while I'm cutting this 12, I know for a fact that I'm going to need a 10. And you'll see why in a minute. Oh, excuse me. it actually is going to be a 9. So I'm going in and cutting it at 9 inches. And I went ahead and did this part because I was hoping that these two would play out. So I'm going to ink these really quick. And by ink, this is the color ink mixed with the clear Waverly. Make sure I got any fingerprints cleared off. I was trying so hard originally to keep that matte nice. Okay, so the reason I went with 9, ended up being 2 9s. The reason I went with 9 is because I knew these are 3 inches wide in order to get the 12 in the full length. This part's 3, this part's 9. So I'm going to flip these over. I'm going to eyeball kind of where their location is going to be. And I'm going to do the same thing. So, let me get that in place. Oh, look, it has its own knothole. Normally, when I was doing my own crafts, I would have finished the back of this also. However, for the sake of me and dragging out timing on videos, I'm not doing the back. Typically, I would do front and back so that I have a full finished piece no matter what. So I'm going to go back in, same thing, make my little faux staple marks, get a little of my darker color. I'm going to push it down in there and then try to sweep off the rest of that without affecting the pattern too much. Okay, you can see it looks like stapled together. So if you haven't figured out where we're at, we are making 1 foot tall, the word eat. So I ended up only needing 3, it looks like, because I still have these extra. I just didn't want to not have enough to do my letters. So I'm going to kind of eyeball how wide I want my little parts to my E. And I'm thinking I'm going to do these at 4 inches. I'll compare it to this. Nope, I want them at 6 inches. That one's going to cut out right in a knot hole, and that's fine. There's knot holes on the edges of things too. Okay, so this works out just right. It looks like I should have about 3.5 inches for my middle piece. So that ends up working out just right, and still having 2 boards left over for a whole nother project. So I'm going to go ahead and cut these pieces down. Whoop. You can see how fast this razor blade works, especially getting it flush against your straight edge. Okay, I'm going to move that out of the way and go ahead and take this out. We're going to touch up these edges. So I didn't hit my 30-minute mark. Some of you that have already watched just my normal videos on Facebook, You are pretty aware that I'd much rather spend my time crafting than learning new technology. So I'm sorry about that. When it comes to painting, I can't fast forward through painting because seeing the process is what you need to learn about the process. So there's no, okay, you've seen somebody paint, it's fine. It would be different if I was just doing a solid color and painting a piece of furniture white. You could fast forward through a lot of that, but the technique itself is what lets you get to this point. So here we are. I'm just going to check and see how that works out. Absolutely perfect. I'm sorry, it is, I would say it's allergy season here, but ever since we moved here, it is always allergy season, and I never knew I had allergies, so always sound a little nasally. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing to these. I know I could have gone the long way with these. I didn't feel like it was necessary. These are so lightweight. If you want to go the long direction with your popsicle sticks, that's fine. Once I go back in later and clean this all up, I didn't want them going across. I feel like it would look neater from the back that way. So I'm going to put a few staples here. I need to slide that a little closer. I only did the staples to one side of this. I really don't want to affect the graining that I have on that other side. I could have easily done it on both, but you'd want to make sure that you rub it the opposite direction that way. So when two of them meet, it's a little easier just to do it this way. And I still did it. Okay, let me move some things out and show you the end result. I want you to look at the detail on that. I have loved wood projects. I'm afraid of saws. I don't know why. I'm okay with a little hand saw, but I'm afraid of speeding, lose your fingers kind of saws. This opens up a whole new ball game for me, because I've always had the interest and the creativity. I've just been too scared. So here you go. These are really good size. I don't know if you can tell just how large that looks, especially for a long, skinny, weird wall area. I've got a spot right next to my pantry that there's not room for much else. But let's see. Get a little closer. So you can kind of see the realism of that. All the way down to looking like it was stapled together. I'm sorry, I get so super excited about this. It opens up so many different craft and decor things for me. And I hope it does for other people. That's why I'm so excited about sharing it. I'm not a pro at any of this by any means. It was just kind of a self-discovery. And for me, the creativity that I'm allowed to get with this just blows my mind. And I have such a creative buzz lately on all the different projects that I've done. You could do this with a family initial, doing a monogram, anything. I absolutely love it. I hope you love the results. I'll be posting photos of it later. And the really great thing is that these can be stuck up with command hooks. That's it. Or command strips. Just stick them on the wall, change your mind, pull them down. No damage. They're so lightweight. And look how gorgeous that is. And I still have lots of extra pieces, so I'm sure you'll be seeing this same wood again. This is how I've gotten so many projects done. I don't throw any of this away. It has been turned into a whole new project every time. So I hope this was fun for you guys. It's super exciting for me, and I have to try to tone myself down because there'd be a lot of squealing at the creative excitement that I get out of this. And I hope you learned something from it and can apply it to your own crafts. Thanks, guys.